Time to get back to basics. Huh. What's up, dogs? It's Cameron with Venus Theory, and that was the dumbest intro of all time. But I saw the opportunity, and I took it, damn it. Anyways, today we're here to talk about how to create a Reese bass. This is like the most common question I get asked on this channel, like all the time. And today's shout out is to Dylon87 on the Wavepool subreddit. So thank you for the suggestion for this video. It's about time I made it. So anyways, today we're here to take a look at how to create a Reese bass and how they work and how to get that really like common, super dark, deep Reese bass thing. So anyways, let's dive into Cubase and get started. Alright guys, so today we're here to do the How Do I Reese video. So this is just covering the basic Reese and how it works and how you do it, and it's very, very easy. So we're gonna get started with a free synth called Charlatan, which can be downloaded from kvraudio.com. It's 64-bit, so it should work in pretty much anything. So we've got our synth up, and we've just got a saw wave right now. Pretty much every synth out there initializes with a saw waveform, which is really how you do this anyway. So what we need, there are a couple options. We can use 2 oscillators, or we can use unison, and we'll get into both options and why they're different. So if we have 1 oscillator right now, we need to tune this down an octave to make it a bass. Or, you know, drop the octave on your keyboard. Either one works. Anyways, so if we have 2 oscillators, we can mix in the second oscillator. These are both saw waves. And then what we can do is use the tune or the fine tune knob on the second oscillator to detune these 2. And that will give us this. So you can hear the more you detune it, the more of that kind of warbly thing that you get. And that is really the essential Reese thing, is just detuning a couple of oscillators. So when we have this down an octave, I had to switch my MIDI controller there. So now we've got this big deep bass. And the more you detune it, the more warbly it's going to get. Obviously, if you go too hard, it just becomes super unstable. So usually you want to only detune this by like 15 to 30 cents. So something like this probably. Nice, there we go. From here, you're going to use a filter. I usually use like a 24 decibel per octave low pass filter, and you just want to low pass this pretty aggressively, probably somewhere in the neighborhood of like 1.5K on downward. Some Reeses, you know, you want darker, so you filter lower, and that's really all there is to it. So once we've got the filter, now we've got, you know, the kind of classic deep Reese. And we can adjust the tuning of this. And we can make it darker or a little brighter. So that's what you would get with 2 oscillators. So now what about unison instead? So now we've just got 1 saw oscillator, but we can give this unison, which is more voices coming from that oscillator. So if we crank this up to like 7, so now there's 7 saw waves coming out of this 1 oscillator, we get this. But it's not detuned. So we need to detune all these voices now. So we could detune them pretty heavily. And there's your kind of classic witch house type of Reese bass, or, you know, just really deep, dark, dirty electronica. So, you know, the more you detune it, the kind of crazier and more buzzy hive of bees it's going to get. So you can hear this here. So again, I find detuning this by about 15 to 30 cents usually works well. And then from here, again, you would just kind of filter. So there's kind of, you know, that classic deep, dark Reese. We could open this up more. And we could open it up all the way. So with different types of filters, so if we use this one, which I believe is a 12 decibel per octave bandpass, maybe this is 24, maybe this is 48. I'm not totally sure. But anyways, with a less aggressive filter, it kind of gives a different feel. So we just kind of get slightly more information above the cutoff point, which is always good. Usually then you'll want to add some portamento or glide to your synth. Usually set the triggering to legato, so that way it transitions between notes smoothly. So, you know, when we're playing a bass line,
it moves around a lot easier. From here, envelope-wise, usually I will up the attack and release just kind of slightly, so it's not as crazy aggressive. And then if your synth has it, you can use stereo or panning function, whatever your synth calls it, if it has one, to kind of get it a lot wider. And, you know, fill out the stereo and more. However, since this is a bass, you do kind of have to be careful with that. You know, once you spread this out across the stereo field, it can get lost in a mix due to phasing issues and things like that. So, you know, just kind of gentle unison and gentle panning works really, really well. So now that we've kind of got the basic principles of how a Reese is done out of the way, we can talk about how to process this, because this, while it's good, it doesn't really sound like what you would hear in a finished track. And I'm going to show you kind of the general way to polish off a really basic Reese. So usually what you'll want to do is get some kind of tube saturation, tape saturation, some kind of saturator. You don't need distortion. You'll want to drive this up a little bit, and I'll kind of show you the difference that this makes just by itself. And when we're saturating things, what we're actually doing is adding harmonics. So this gives this really low-pass sound more harmonic information, which kind of brings it out and, you know, makes it come forward a little bit. And especially in a mix, saturation is incredibly helpful. Obviously, you don't want to saturate everything, but adding a little bit here and there is always, you know, a good idea to kind of make something poke forward and be like, hey, yo, what's going on? From here, you'll want to use compression. So usually what I like is some kind of optical compressor or tube compressor or whatever. Some of my go-tos for this are the Cubase tube compressor, and then Waves has the CLA2A, which is another great choice. These two are basically the exact same thing. Tube compressor just gives you a bit more control, which I like. With basses, I usually find about 8 to 10 dB to be the sweet spot for compression. So we'll mix this all the way in. We get out a bit of drive from the tube in the tube compressor here. And then we just need to check our output. So if we bypass this and we turn it on, we hear it's a little bit quieter. So we need to just bring up the output. There we go. Maybe it's a bit too loud now. And there you go. And that's really all there is to these types of sounds. I mean, to go kind of further on this, you might want to add like some chorus or something. So we could do chorus before the tube saturation here and just make it really, really slow, fairly wide, and, you know, mix it in pretty gently, maybe 30%. And that gives us something more like that. The little bit of noise you're hearing here actually is coming from the DAWg, the tube saturation. So we could switch this out for something like Magneto, which is just a tape saturator instead. So we could do something like that. However, I find DAWg with that, you know, tube saturation and the kind of grit it adds is really pleasing more often than not. Might want to open this filter a little more. There we go. We've kind of got that regular old deep Reese. And then, you know, if you wanted this more dark, again, just lower that filter. And this, I mean, this is really all there is to it. So as you can see, this is a very basic sound, but I definitely get it. When I first started out, this was kind of a weird thing to think about making because it sounds like this kind of really rich and complex sound. But I mean, like I said, all there is to it is just grab some unison, detune it, filter. And then from there, it's just some really basic processing. I mean, only other thing I might do here is grab like an EQ to filter out some of the gunk around 400 hertz or so. So right about there, we might give this a slight boost around 120 or so for the second order harmonics to come out. So it's a little easier to hear on really small speakers or cheap speakers, cheap headphones, whatever. And you know, that's pretty much all there is to it.
And that's it for this video, guys. So thank you for watching, and I hope you learned something. As always, be sure to like and subscribe, and I will see you guys again soon.